Hey, everybody, welcome back. No matter where you are on your author journey, it can feel like there's always more to learn. Well, because there is, especially when you're new to this process. There's so many questions to ask, and even more questions that you wouldn't even know to ask. Just getting a book out of your head and into a format that can be purchased takes a tremendous amount of effort. So let's make sure you don't just hit publish, but that you properly launch your book so it helps you achieve all the goals you had for writing a business book in the first place. To help you figure out what some of those goals are and avoid some common mistakes, I've brought together an author panel. Now, stay tuned for a frank conversation about the highs and lows of being a business author. These authors participated in one of my Kindle cross-promotion campaigns in which business authors lowered their Kindle book prices to 99 cents. I organize these twice a year around Amazon Prime Days and Black Friday. Dozens of authors work collaboratively to spread the word and boost book sales. It's been a great way to generate interest in evergreen books that were published many years earlier and celebrate those recent publications. The best part is that our collaboration didn't end when the campaign was over. Nearly every author opted to sign up for an author panel after the event. With me today are three authors: Carlo Mahfouz, who authored Reality Check in Pursuit of the Right Questions. He did this to unlock the art of precision and presence in your leadership, innovation, and life. Bill Soroka is the author of 6 books, 5 of which reached #1 bestseller in at least one category during the last Kindle cross-promotion campaign. Amazing. His latest is Your Passport to Apostilles, 116 tips to build a thriving business as an apostille agent. And then we have Tillis Lederman is the author of The Connector's Advantage, 7 Mindsets to Grow Your Influence and Impact, which is a follow-up to her best-selling book, The 11 Laws of Likability, because she knows the strength of relationships leads to success. Please join me in welcoming Bill, Carlo, and Michelle. Bill, we're going to kick things off with you. I'd love to know a little bit about who did you write your book for? Who's your audience or the ideal reader for your book?
Yeah, talk about a niche audience, Robbie. Thank you. My book was written for anyone, but especially notaries, but anyone that's looking for a new business, a side hustle, an add-on service. My book gives readers a glimpse into the mystery and intrigue of international document authentication.
It is very niche. I've had the pleasure of doing some events in the world of notaries and getting to know them. And what's cool is, like every other niche, there are people who are very entrepreneurial and see this as not just like a side hustle, one thing, but like they're building empires. And you're one of those kind of people who've really taken that to the extreme and brought people with you on that journey. Carlo, go ahead and share with us, who did you write your book for?
Absolutely, Robbie. So my target audience is mostly innovators, product leaders, and anyone who's trying to solve complex problems, because it's seeking to figure out what the right question is and how to set up the stage for that. So anyone struggling to find what those real problems are would be the perfect reader.
That's awesome. Hey, Michelle, you and I met when you were working on one of your books. So I love that. So tell us, who do you have as your audience in mind when you're writing your books?
My books have always been described a little bit as evergreen because they apply so broadly to so many people. But in my head, those that want to increase their impact, their influence, and of course, their results, and understand that relationships drive all of those elements.
So you have multiple books under your belt and you're a speaker, because I also know you through the National Speakers Association. And I know when I was first writing my first book, it felt like a must, like a business card or a website, like you have to have a book. So I don't know that I was as clear about the long-term goals beyond must-have book. So when you started writing these books and as you continue doing it, did you have some metrics that you were tracking? Like, how did you know your books were being successfully received? Like, what was the part that you were paying attention to?
I will tell you, I was completely clueless with the first one. I didn't know anything. I just had something I had to say. And to some extent, that's what drove me to write all of the books, is that I had something I had to say. But as I've evolved in my author journey, I have looked for certain metrics. Obviously, book sales is one of them. But also it's the number of inquiries that you get. I now am known around likability. So anytime there's a story in the Wall Street Journal, they'll call me, which is really cool. So there's all sorts of different metrics that you can look at to see what the success is for you.
That's awesome. Bill, what about you? How does this changing for you?
How's it changed?
Well, what were the success metrics, I should say?
Yeah.
Like, how did you track, like, this is going well?
Well, good. Very similar to what Michelle said. At first, it was just there was a book inside of me that had to come out. But while I was preparing to publish my first book, Sign and Thrive, it was a roller coaster of emotions and goals. But I had hired coaches. I had taken a course. The way I figure things out is I buy a dozen books about it. So I had this dream in mind of what I wanted this book to do. And it was kind of like the usual, right? Hit bestseller, get 100 reviews, change 1 million lives, earn some royalties, have bookstores and TV crews pounding down my door for inventory and interviews, and maybe an invitation to Oprah's or Reese Witherspoon's book club, right? Pretty big dreams that way.
Wow. And we'll talk more about how that's changed over time.
Yeah, exactly.
I knew there was a change in there somewhere. Carlo, what did you think your success metrics were going to be when you first got started? I think, by the way, this is very helpful, Bill and Michelle, for all those who are new to this journey or just released a book, because, most of us didn't figure it out the first book. I actually felt like I learned so much writing and publishing a first book. I had to write a second book. Like it was so much effort. Carlo, you've got one book under your belt. I'm kind of curious, how did you approach this? What were the success metrics that you were paying attention to?
Yes, so definitely with first book, a lot of, I didn't know necessarily what to look for, but I as well looked for support. So I did the program, and the program helped to guide me through each one of the steps. I didn't do it alone. I think it will be very hard to do it alone. So there were multiple validation points across the writing journey, that the content is good, there is a certain audience, clarifying what that is. And at a certain threshold, I did like an Kickstarter campaign, Indiegogo, I think at the time, which kind of fielded some of that. So I was able to engage early with the target audience and say families and friends, and expand on that. So that was my first kind of measurement of, okay, there is an appeal, there is definitely an audience that I can build from.
Love this.
Yeah.
I just want to say, I love that you brought us back to, it has to be a good book, and it has to be a book written for a specific audience. So you made sure you were getting support along the way to make sure that you were writing the right kind of book for an audience that was looking for that book. So that is the first really important metric to focus on. And then what were your hopes for the book? Like, were you checking, like they said, book sales or review counts? Like, what was it that you were paying attention to?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there were 1,000 books earlier on, and the reviews, as far as, I set up a lot of things to get to those. Especially I did a big launch at early, as soon as that hit. But I think it's a full-time job in addition to everything else you're doing. So you really, the level of consistency that it requires to follow through and keep, the engine running behind it. I did like a hybrid publishing, so a lot of it, ended up being on myself, ended up being a little bit too much. And so I wanted the 100, I wanted 1,000. I reached very close to a lot of those numbers and targets because of the campaign. So the campaign kind of created a significant early momentum, which I think would have been very hard to do otherwise.
So if I wanted to make sure, so you built a launch campaign with a focus on 100 reviews and 1,000 books sold in sort of a specific time frame. Was there?
Yeah, so it was within a year.
I
didn't get to the reviews, and I dropped the ball that on my front specifically. I think more follow-ups would have helped. But on the book sales, I was able to get very close to it, which was great.
We're going to definitely talk more about reviews because that's my jam. But Bill, I want to come back over to you to talk about the way your measurement or definition of success has evolved over the months and years, and as you've released more books. What now matters to you as you're thinking about releasing a book?
Great question. When I was writing my first book, I was still trying to be pretty pragmatic about the book's results, but I was also battling my inner critics and those little demons that I had with bullhorns shouting, "Who do you think you are publishing a book? And no one's going to read a book about notary work. You're a joke. They're all going to laugh at you." I went through all of that. So I had to really work hard and stay the course to write my book, and I still do, so I can understand why so many people didn't actually follow through with publishing. Writing, publishing, and marketing a book is a lot of work, and it's a major head game too. And it was a surprise to me how much that was. You get to know yourself on levels you didn't even know existed, which is why I've fallen in love with writing and publishing. So all those extrinsic goals that I talked about still exist for me, right? I want my book to be a bestseller because that means it's helping more people and I'm theoretically earning more royalties. More reviews usually means that more people will buy my book because social proof makes a difference for 90% of consumers. And I'd still love for Oprah or Reese to take my calls. But there's an intrinsic payoff for writing and publishing for me now. And it drives me. Every book that I write requires something new of me. It forces me to become who is required to write and publish it. I'm literally a different person each time I hit the publish button. It's the most challenging and rewarding thing I've ever done. And that's what I love about it. And the focus, and I love that Carlo brought it up, and I love that you're backing this, is the importance of writing a book, a good book, that's packed full of value and that is going to last beyond one reader. The type of book that lasts perennially. People buy it and pass it on to a friend because they've got to read it. That's the kind of quality content I love writing right now. And that's how I determine success for myself.
That's awesome. Really appreciate that insight and how it's evolved. Michelle, take it home for us. How has this changed? You've written multiple books. Like, have you approached success now any differently as things have evolved for you?
It's been very interesting listening because, as Bill said, I think writing the book's the easy part. The production is a little bit harder, but the marketing is like, I had no interest in that. Right. I'll be honest. My interest was in getting that message out. And to some extent, that's how I measure success now, is how many hands that book is in. And how do I know? Because now when I'm asked to do a speech, they'll purchase bulk orders of the book. And so I know they're in people's hands. And so, for me, it is, the royalty checks are nice. And that was a great measurement for the first book because I was traditionally published and I had an advance and I earned my advance within the first 6 months. I hit that number. And so I was getting royalty checks right away, which was super cool. And I still get them to this day, even though that book is 13 years in print. I still get every 6 months, I get a check. So that's a really nice measurement. But for me, really, it's about organic reviews. I know with launch campaigns, for example, as you well know, you are one of the experts in my latest book. And I tapped a lot of amazing expertise out there. I literally curated my connections, which is, exemplifying what I'm talking about in the book. And each of them then, shared it and reviewed it. And that was fabulous. But seeing strangers, when you go on, you're like, oh, I got a new review. Good, better, and different. Somebody read it and had an emotional response to it. And I don't have a lot of bad reviews, but even like the ones that are like, I don't like the voice of this person on the audio recording, but they didn't say anything about the content. And so it is the messages that you get from strangers, from people reading, saying what the impact was. And for me, impact is success.
I'm so glad you brought up reviews. And
I thought you might.
Thanks for passing that to me. So here's the thing I think about reviews, and Bill sort of mentioned this too. There's social proof on the book sales page, and they live on a long time, like the life of the book, right? As a little different than hitting #1 bestseller, getting the orange ribbon, and that might last an hour. It might last a half a day, and then you might get bumped from it. But if you're lucky, you can grab that screenshot and put it on your book's landing page or on your social media or something. But the evidence goes away on the book sales page on Amazon, and it doesn't really help people decide whether the book is for them in the long term. So I actually agree that even a negative review with some information is helpful. So I always joke about my wife. I probably bring this up every episode, but she's an avid listener, really, of books. Most of them are on books. And if she sees a 1-star review saying it's like too much smut, she's like, "Ooh, what's this book?" Right? Like one person's yuck is someone else's yum. And so I had a person review my second book who it was a negative review, but I wrote him and I said, "Can you give some context? Because the book's for 50-year-old entrepreneurial women and you're none of those things." And so he gave some context. And so I was like, "You can put any number of stars you want, but it actually helps other people know the book is for them." And that's helpful, right? That's how I think of it. Getting reviews, though, is painfully hard. And you have to have reviews to get organic reviews. You have to like work hard to get reviews for those organic reviews that Michelle was talking about to come in. So, Bill, you've had a number of books. You have probably varied over time your launch process for those books. They've become maybe a little more sophisticated. As you releasing books, your last book, for instance, how did you approach this? Did you say, okay, I really want to get a certain number of reviews, I'm going to build a launch team? I mean, you have a wide community. I know that part. A lot of people respect what you're doing, but respect doesn't turn into reviews without a lot of asking and follow-up.
Oh, geez. That is so true. You want me to speak about reviews in particular?
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a struggle. Almost just you can let yourself get a little disappointed in it too, because you get 300 people on the launch team that say they're going to read the book, they're going to give a review, and then you're in this constant balance of asking them to follow through, but not trying to pester them in doing that. So it's a constant balance. Like my book that launched in January still is stuck at 37 reviews, and that must be some industry number, because I feel like I've been stuck on 37 for a few of my books. The latest one, I think we're at 27. So I know there's another wall coming at 37 reviews when we hit it. But like you've said, and like Michelle said, the once you work hard, like 27 reviews is nothing to laugh at. That's amazing. I've seen books that have been on the market for 20 years from famous authors that have 2 reviews on it, right? So having 27 reviews is amazing, and it's enough to give it some momentum and you gain through the years. And I've learned this through my first book, Sign and Thrive. I think they're up to, and I don't know the exact numbers, Robbie, you helped me figure that out, but there's like 1,400 ratings and reviews. Of the reviews, I think there's almost 1,000, which is amazing when you think about it, that many people took the time to post a review. But I think the initial efforts in the beginning help, what do you call that? When you prime the pump, it gives people permission to say, oh, I can review this too. It's okay to like this, or it's okay not to like this.
I love it. I'm actually on your book page right now, and you have 1,475 total ratings. That's the stars, and 280 reviews, which is really incredible.
Okay. Cool.
And I mentioned that I always want to give an example, and this is a quality example because ratings are easier to get because you don't have to write anything.
Right.
And I don't know why Amazon made that choice, but they did a while ago, and so you don't have to write a review in order to put any number of stars, 1 to 5. But to get 280 people willing to write something in some detail, that in itself is really amazing. And of course, at a glance, 1,400 plus is still like, wow, that's huge. But it's years, and I can see that there are even reviews that have been coming in really recently, which is nice to see that you have reviews coming in 2024, even though the book's been out for many years. So that's longevity, and that's the evergreen content, and that's a lot of what Michelle was talking about too. So my claim to fame is that I have published 3 books as an indie author, and all of them have more than 200 ratings and about 200 or over 200 written reviews. My latest is 249 reviews. And if anyone out there is willing to just write one more so I can just start saying 250, please, I'm at 252 ratings and 249 written reviews. Talk about getting stuck there. But I mean, a lot of hand-holding. I have a whole process when I work with people. Michelle, how have you approached this whole getting reviews? Has this been, I mean, it's painful, but you're a networking master. So I'm like, Do you have any tips for us about how to get the people both you wrote about to help you, or the people who are like enjoying the content?
I'm actually so glad you came back to me because I was hoping to get to share this. I actually just went over to my book site because I'm like, I don't know how many reviews I have. And it was like 142 on my latest. And I did put some focus on, my most recent book, but I didn't originally. It was, again, as I said, my first book's traditionally published, whatever the publisher did. So they sent it out to some book reviewers and things like that. But I think every single one of my reviews on that book is organic. And I think it's approaching 200. I'm not quite there. And that's over 10 years of not trying. So, but then there's also reviews on different sites. One of the things that I do is anytime somebody reaches out to me on LinkedIn or via email or at one of my talks or anywhere, and they say something about one of my books, I say, thank you so much. If you have the time, honest reviews are so greatly appreciated. It is a standard saying of mine. It is a standard piece of my response in a LinkedIn. Somebody reaches out, I read your book. I want to connect with you on LinkedIn. So glad you enjoyed it. If you have the time, and make it easy for them. And that's the key to get past that 27, 37, whatever that, number is. And again, I have to admit, I was not focused on reviews with any of my books until the most recent one. It just wasn't part of the launch plan.
So Connector's Advantage, which is the book you're mentioning, and that's the one I was in. So 142 total ratings and 113 written reviews. I like this. Here's the reason I think this is awesome. The ratio is between the two is very high. I'm always wondering about authors who have 123 ratings and 7 written reviews, and they're walking around telling me, I have 123 reviews. I'm like, no, you don't. You have 7, and 2 of them have the same last name as you, and one of them's the name of your co-author. Like, come on now. And Michelle, I love the networking people who wrote a book and they want to be on my podcast, and I look and they have like 8 reviews. I'm like, you wrote a book about networking, so you kind of expect a certain high. Now, it is hard to do. Carlo, how did you approach this whole review process?
A lot of great points. For me, as well, it was tough. Marketing, I would say, initially was not the thing I was expecting to do most of the follow-up to, but I did set up a lot of the foundation. So that was the interesting part. I did a lot of the ramp up. I designed a launch party as well, where I gave and signed a lot of books, and that, my only ask was the reviews in a way where I read some of the pieces of the content. So I primed a lot of kind of what makes it hard to put a review in. But I failed on the follow-up. So I kind of set up a lot of the foundation, and then the next steps to get that through the hoops, I kind of got distracted with other things at the time. So
I can tell, Carlo, that you did make a real effort, though, because you have 25 written reviews. And as Bill said, getting over 20 is effort. Like anything over 20 means you had a system in place. But to aim for 50 or more, it's the term I use, because Bill was like, I don't want to bother people. I call it polite persistence, because if they set the intention to write a review and I help them through the process of actually doing it, they will feel awesome and I will feel awesome. I'm going to share one thing. This came up on another one of these panels. In the back of my book, I actually have a little like a request, and I have a call for writing a review. And I made a little shortcut so that it goes right to that page on Amazon. And I put 3 prompts. The prompt is, what is your most valuable takeaway or insight? What have you done differently, or what will you do differently because of this book? And who would benefit from reading this book? And then it just sort of says 2 or 3 sentences would be amazing. This is about getting, it says like your feedback helps get this book into the right people's hands, people who need it most. I think there's a misnomer out there that reviews are like book reports from 4th grade. I think there's a like real angstiness when you say, I want a review. They're like, oh my gosh. You're like, no. 2 or 3 sentences. Michelle.
I have to say, I love that you did that, because that was my whole point about making it easy. You gave them the prompts. I answer this question, I'm done. Another way to make it easy, and I don't technically know how to do this, but Robbie, you probably do, is that you can go on and give a direct link to your book review page, so that you paste it in your response to somebody who said, I love your book. Thank you so much. Here's a link. Make it easy. Click here. Answer these 3 questions. Just
What
don't
I
make
actually
it hard for them to jump through the hoop to do this for you.
I actually did. I made a shortcut. So robbiesamuels.com/breakout review goes to that part of Amazon on that book, right? Like super, just like go here. Simplicity is a big piece of this, building a team, following through and all of that. Beyond though, getting reviews, I'd love to know what your biggest challenge was from conceiving of the book. I mean, and Bill, you talked a little bit about the mindset. Who am I to write a book? Who's got a good story to share about a challenge when it came to writing a book? Give me a little wave so I'll know who I'm calling on here. Michelle.
I got tons of challenges.
She's got the t-shirt too. All right, go for it.
I think one of the biggest challenges is the right title. And I have seen a significant difference in a fabulous title with my first book, The 11 Laws of Likability. It rolls off the tongue. To my latest, The Connector's Advantage, which I put it in front of so many people. I got feedback on that title. A bookstore owner said that's the right title, and they were wrong. I should have stuck with the formula that I already knew that worked. 11 Laws of Likability. This should have been the 7 Mindsets of the Connector. And so that title, the clarity in your title matters. And I wish I could go back and change it, and that The Connector's Advantage would have been part of the subtitle.
I appreciate that so much because I have books that you have to say the title and subtitle for it to really make sense. And there are some books out in the world that the title on its own does that job. And I find it's a mouthful. It's a lot to type out. Like I can't just say croissants versus bagels, right? That's my first book. Out of context, what are we talking about? Breakfast foods, right? If I say strategic, effective, and inclusive networking at conferences, it all makes more sense. At least you may be a little bit curious about the original title, but like, the context. So some lessons. I don't think it was bad, but it was very it was like I understood what it meant, and it's about branding, but now I have to educate people what that branding is. Bill, did you have a challenge? Yeah, go for it.
I have two from two different perspectives. So the biggest challenge for me in the height of all of my hustle, running the business, working on the business, was finding time to write it. And I met so much internal resistance and external resistance. So I had to find a way to find time to write the book. And that's why my first one took me 3 years, because I was figuring this out, right? When do you write it? Then life gets in the way, business gets in the way, and then it gets shelved for a long time. So I had to schedule time between 3 and 5 in the morning to make that first book happen, because my phone wasn't ringing it between 3 and 5. So I literally had to become a different person, because I was not a morning person. But if I knew if I wanted to get this book out, I had to make time to do that. So that changed everything and made this book, or any of these books, possible. To contrast that, my second book took 6 months. So I really narrowed the gap when I figured out how to make time for this. The second thing is the biggest challenge that I see from others, because I love writing and publishing books now. So I'm constantly sharing this. I want to have little groups and let's hug each other and talk about this. And I think everybody has a book inside them somewhere, right? Like I truly believe that. But one of the biggest challenges I see from that perspective is that they fall into worrying about the marketing, worrying about the cover, worrying about all those things that have to be worried about. They're important, but none of it matters until your first draft is written. And so they start their first draft, and then it's resistance to writing that gets them thinking about their branding and their cover and their title, all those other things that will come. But nothing's going to matter until you write that first draft.
Exactly what Carlo said earlier. It's like you have to have that quality book. I've seen people talk about like building out a book website, like the book doesn't exist, even in like a first draft. I think that this is termed Noble Obstacle. It's from the book Finish by John Acuff. The subtitle is Getting to Done. And a noble obstacle is a little different than a shiny object. And one of the things that makes it different is that a friend of yours won't necessarily know that it's getting in your way, because it seems like and to some people, it might seem kind of a reasonable thing to think about. Oh yeah, of course you should think about the marketing, but not if you don't like if that's stopping you from writing the book, like it's a noble obstacle that you need to like update your website first or something like that. Carlo, what was the sort of challenge for you between, you know, getting the book out of your head to the publication and marketing?
I think that was it, getting it out of my head. So my background is engineering, to be honest. And when I started writing the book, I think first chapter was so vulnerable. I was like exposing myself. I was like, what the heck am I doing? So it was really hard because I think when you write, you really expose your thinking process. So I actually rewrote the book before I published it. I kind of like flipped it all on its head. And it takes a lot of courage in even the early chapters to really allow yourself for this exposure in the early drafts to get it out, not judge it too much, especially once the story gets personal. I didn't expect it to get personal. Like that was, you know, a side effect, but, you know, it does because, you know, the book write itself at some point, it takes a journey of its own, I think it really does once you start researching. And so that was very challenging. So that, you know, vulnerability in it was a hump I had to go over. And I'm like, should I be continue writing? And like, what does the next chapter? But eventually you realize that's really what most people connect to. Like, I think that vulnerability that seeps through the writing is what most people like are looking for, whether through the challenges or experiences or like the personal stories, whatever that looks like. And that changes completely the mindset on how you approach it. Doesn't make it any easier, but it's, you know, it still helps to understand that there is a benefit out of it too.
It sounds like both you and Bill are talking about how writing the book changes you and how it brings you into the book and all of that. I do think you're right that the how-to of something, I mean, that's very dry and it's not memorable and it doesn't make people feel excited, but the storytelling of your own stories or your client stories, and that's another reason to share as you're writing because you get great stories. I remember just having a zillion questions about like next steps, and I was part of a program when I was initially the first book. And even with that, there's so many unknowns. And one of the things that I was able to get someone like pointed out to me, and I wanted to mention it here, the imprint name, the publisher name, when you go to get your ISBN as an indie author, my computer like auto-filled it as my name because it's like saw it as an entry point for name. And fortunately, I knew to look for that because I would have been publishing it under Robbie Samuels, which is a very clear flag that it was an indie book. And since self-published books have a bad rap in some areas, we want to like not call attention. We want to have as quality of book, quality publication, editing, design, all the stuff that will make this book really feel quality. And so the imprint name can be one of those things that flags, even if everything else is looking pretty good. If it's like the name of your company or your name or whatever your computer auto-filled, like we want to be careful about that as we're moving forward. I want to talk now, though, about effective marketing strategies for book sales, particularly bulk book sales. Michelle, I think you really touched on this, that as you're getting speaking opportunities, you're selling bundles of books with it. And that, I mean, individual book sales is not really the way to make money as an author. How is there any strategies you're doing that are helping you get more books sold through that?
You know, it's interesting. It's kind of chicken and the egg, which is coming first. For me, what's coming first is actually the speaking engagement. So I'm asked to be on a lot of stages, and then to close the deal, I might say, well, I always include 50 books or 100, or, and if they have 125, I'm like, I'll throw in the extra 25. But if they have 300 people, I'll be like, I'll include this many, and then I get them to purchase the balance. And so that's nice. They're like, well, that's great, but we have 500 people. No problem. I'll have it all shipped to you and take care of everything. And I'll even come in the night before and sign your VIP copies. And I will bring, I'm like, I will also send you bookmarks for everything, or we can do custom bookmarks with your sponsor. So I have all of these things that I take care of them in the process. And so it's kind of like okay, you do it, just tell us how much. And so it's like this lovely way to close a deal. I also, in the bulk sales, tried a strategy, but I will share that it didn't work yet, which is the idea of doing custom books. So I speak about some organizations within the book, and nicely, right? So I talk about how we are not just building trust as an individual, but we build it as a brand and as an organization, and we build relationships. And so I talk about a couple of organizations. I reached out to CEOs and said, hey, this would make a great holiday gift. And so I have had a few successes, I should say, managers who said, I'm going to make this my holiday gift for my team. And they send me a list of names. I sign each one. I've had people come to my home to pick them up because they didn't want to pay for shipping because it was a New Jersey company. So it was easy. And so little things like that, doing those little specials, like I'll do a buy one, gift one and give the gift of connection. So a holiday special where I will sign, bookmark, and ship them to the same person so that they can hand deliver the book. Little things like that.
I love all these little pieces. I did a lot of things for my first book because it was about networking at events, and I was speaking at events, and I learned early on that even when the speaking fee wasn't that great, there was a second budget somewhere for buying books. And so I would offer 50 books, and then I would offer them a 25% discount for any group 50 or more books beyond that. And then I would have them either, ideally shipped directly to them. And then I didn't want to sit and sign for like 4 hours the night before. So I made a bookmark with my signature and my like tagline. And then sometimes we co-branded. So a lot of what you're talking about, it's the planning ahead and making all that really easy for them to say yes. I had a call today with a representative from a global company, and this is one of those like long journeys becoming a recognized expert, but it's for my expertise related to my first book, which is about networking at events, which no one needed to know about for a while because we were all in the middle of a pandemic and at home. But he was looking for a networking person who could do a virtual talk, and my name kept coming up. And then someone sent him my NPR interview, and I got an NPR interview because I did a TEDx talk. And I did a TEDx talk because I wrote the first book. Right. So like all this over time. And so we go through the whole conversation, and I name a big fee for my virtual presentation. And they goes, okay. And I'm thinking I could have asked for more. Like I totally had that moment. And then I thought, oh, I can ask for more. And I said, what about books? Don't you want everyone to have a copy of this? And he goes, oh yeah. And then we start talking about setting up book clubs in their regions around the world. And I'm like, wow, this is going to be a great conversation. Like, I'm like, this is so exciting. If you don't have a book, you can't have that second part of that conversation. Like, you just don't have that opportunity. Carlo, how are you thinking about book sales or generating excitement, or maybe things like joining the Kindle cross promotion? Like, what's the different activities you're doing to help boost sales?
Yeah, so I tried the volume pricing. I did it in the campaign earlier on, and that went really well. So I had a couple, accompanied with a workshop and a couple of books. When I introduced signed volume pricing, I had someone who reached that they want to gift it as a birthday. So that was an unexpected kind of fringe kind of part of the signature and the volume pricing accordingly. Now I'm looking mostly at the engagement, so how I can foster more engagement, whether through the speaking and then add the book. I think the book is always an add-on, or I think it kind of completes the package to a little bit what Michelle was speaking, and I think there is a lot of value in thinking about it in that way, not necessarily as it being the focus. So I'm trying to create more of an expansive experience through a platform where the book is part of the piece of the content, but there is as well learning modularities around it and things like that. Because I do believe there is value in engaging bigger groups passively somehow. And I think that, there is room for the book to support in that. So I'm working on that platform now and like shaping it to both deliver the learning material and the book as a side of it, and there it has the opportunity to scale beyond just the physical books, but as well digitally.
Yeah, thank you for that. Hey, Bill, I have a slightly different conversation here for you, and that is, your clarity, because I think of you as like a super strategic business person. So I want to understand, particularly as you continued writing books, how writing books links in with your business goals? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, great question. And because my passion and truly what I believe my purpose is to write books. In fact, my mission in life, my vision for my life is to travel the world, write or meet interesting people, and write the words that touch, move, and inspire. That's what's in my head. And this, I happen to be in a notary business right now, and that's my vehicle of purpose for this. So every book I write is tied to my business right now. And I treat every book as a lead magnet for everything else that I'm doing, because I truly believe that the products, the coaching, the courses, everything that I've done, and the collaborations and the people I bring into my orbit, I believe they were all of the same mindset and heart set. We are trying to help people succeed however they define success for themselves. We're shining a light on the path behind us and helping people. So using what is a passion for me, writing and publishing, to fuel this business, which fuels my lifestyle and the lifestyle of thousands of others, is exciting to me. And I get really strategic about that. I love that you included the page for reviews. I've just started doing that in my book, but I also have lead magnets tied into my book. So I have additional resources. I love giving stuff away. In fact, I wanted to talk a little bit about that too, because that's where we were going with the bulk sales. Having an abundant mindset and giving away books has actually resulted in tremendous sales for me. I have lots of examples of that. And it takes some convincing with co-authors and people that don't quite see it, but it has paid off so huge, where I give away 300 books and I get 3,000 books purchased. I'll give you another example right now. I'm doing a challenge right now. And as part of that challenge, I'm giving away a free PDF version of one of my books that I wrote in 2022 or published in 2022. It's now back up to bestseller, cycling up and down, right? And I'm giving it away for free. And it's a bestseller again on Amazon. So there's something to this theory of win-win and giver's gain. It just blows my mind. And I think that authors should not be afraid of giving away their books in certain circumstances.
You know, you also bring up the value of participating in something like the Kindle cross promotion campaign, which is what brought all of us together, where I'm asking business authors to lower their Kindle book price to 99 cents, or in some cases $1.99. And, you know, I had one person say to me, well, I'm paying you $50. How many books do I have to sell? And it's like, that's the short-sighted view of this, right? Because what we're really doing is we're re-engaging you as the author around this book, and we're getting people excited. And you never know, even if you sold 12 books, one of those people might then book you for coaching or speaking or join your community or whatever the thing is. It's about getting in front of the right audiences, getting the media opportunities. And so many, 70% of the people who were in that last Kindle campaign were in the top 10 for at least one category. And then folks like you, Bill, were in number one spot for a long time, like many days, for multiple books, multiple categories. I think that those spikes have a long tail after the fact. And so if we continue to do activity after something like a campaign, whether it's a launch campaign or the Kindle cross promotion campaign, we can kind of ride that long tail afterwards for a little bit longer and continue to see good sales, reviews coming in, and all of that. You mentioned the lead magnets. I wanted to ask specifically, Michelle, did you plant links to opt-in pages in your books that go to resources people can get? Was that part of your overall strategy as well?
In my first book, I had a link to an assessment that they could take. And every once in a while I see, oh, somebody bought this assessment and the add-on coaching. In the latest book, I put a lot of links and resources that the other experts provided.
Nice.
So there's a lot of, cross promotion, so to speak. But no, I really didn't do a lot of that. Go to this landing page and I should have hired you.
On that note, I want to make sure I talk about the BizBook Publishing Hub. If you go to bizbookpublishinghub.com, there are more than 50 experts like me who are helping entrepreneurs navigate the complexities of writing, editing, publishing, and marketing a business book. It's a free resource. You can check it out again at bizbookpublishinghub.com. We also host 6 times a year a free virtual networking event for writers and authors. Carlo, did you do any kind of lead magnet thing where you kind of gathered email addresses from people who are reading your book?
Yeah, I did even more. I kind of set up a whole platform. So the end of the book kind of culminates in a platform that people can access. And I'm kind of doubling down on that with the second book now. So from this first chapter, I kind of kick you off to a website where you kind of start engaging with the book. I added, not all of them were lead magnets. Some of them captured email, some of them did, but the final one definitely was meant as a platform that creates a community. Because I think the community aspect is very important as well, and how to garner and like build that, whether through the newsletter or as a consequence of the book. Because the book is a very passive thing when it's, you know, goes out into the wild. How to capture some of that back, I really was trying to do that. And I think that's something now with the second book I'm building even from the get-go. So there's that touch points hits you like from the beginning and continues throughout with resources and more things that you can access.
I think everyone who's listening is realizing just how much strategy can go into planning out a book. And if you know that the end result is you're building this huge community on a platform, you might have a willingness to put more effort in up front, because it's like a clear through line. At first, you don't know that. But if you go into it with that idea, that's really awesome. In a moment, I'm going to come back to Bill for his advice that he would give to someone who is writing a book to grow a business. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. Bill, what advice do you have for writers?
What advice do I have for writers? Okay, so I have a few. In fact, I think I could probably come up with 5 real quick off the top of my head. First, yeah, I think you need to do it. I believe every small business owner that wants to grow their business should write a book if they're interested in doing it the right way. If you're listening to this, you're an expert in something. There's a reason you're here. That's just how I believe the universe works. And a book immediately boosts your credibility and opens doors you never even knew existed. When you do write it, give them the goods. Don't hold anything back. Some people will build an empire based on your book alone, but most people will need more. So knock their socks off with value in the book, build a relationship with them, and they'll come to you for further courses, programs, coaching, or whatever else you might offer. And the third thing is invest in your book. Hire quality coaches, buy a program, hire an expert or several along the way. Don't skip on the cover. Pay for great editors. I spent $10,000 on an editor for just one of my books, and it was the best investment I ever made. Good counsel in these environments is the difference between a dud and dynamite. Fourth one, I think I would say, think of your book as an investment in property, like a piece of real estate. Every title is like a separate address that you own. Tend to it, build it correctly, and the yield will be greater with less maintenance. The royalties from each book can take care of you and your family forever. Those things just keep coming if you build a perennial seller. So the investment of your time, energy, and resources is totally worth it. And finally, and this is something I wish I would have started earlier, and it's a little more practical, pragmatic, funnel all your royalties into a separate bank account. And if you're in a situation to leave them there, to invest without spending it, please do so. Because when you watch your royalties grow, it does something different for you. Sometimes you're doing better than you even realize.
That last one, that's sweet. All right, Carlo, going to you. What advice do you have for writers?
I think I have 3 off the top of my head that kind of come to mind. The first one, don't do it alone. I don't believe writing a book in so many ways. I think, there is time where you're writing by yourself, etc. But most of the time, you need editors, you need people who you trust to kind of read the most vulnerable early writings, those the ones which you don't want to show anyone. So I think that's really necessary throughout the process. On the flip side of it, outside of just the writing of the book comes the marketing of the book, and then the sharing the book out, and start that as early as you can, even before you write. I would say start that from day one, because it takes a while, it takes time for you to craft and understand your audience, and include your audience in the process. I think that really helps you down the line kind of shape what that looks like. And the last, consider it a piece of the puzzle, not the whole puzzle. I think it's important to consider a book is just a one kind of asset, to go to Bill's kind of a little bit. It's one of the assets that you are creating. It's not the asset. So once you start looking at it from that lens, it changes as well. Because when you're writing it, you're too much into it. And then it gives you a little bit of that perspective.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. Michelle, closing us out. What are your...
Sure, after they gave all this great advice, now it's my turn. I agree with a lot of what I said, especially about getting of the feedback. But I would just say get clear. I've talked to a lot of authors in process, and my first question to them is always, why? Why do you want to write this book? And to get clear on what their success looks like. I often say, different than Bill's comment here, this is not necessarily a money-making adventure, right? There's a lot of investment, financial investment, not just time and energy investment, of getting that book to the shelf. So understand that your ROI is not just book sales. It is an increase in your speaking fees. There's so many different elements. It's the passive income course that I just created off of the latest book called the Connected Leaders Club. And so it's all of that things that build your platform, your brand, your rates, all the other things that come off of it, your coaching. So really don't get so narrow in determining what success looks like for that process.
I 100% underscore that. And I want to let you know that my first question when someone talks about writing a book is, I say, how does this book support your business goals? And a lot of times they're like, I'm like, okay, well then you're not ready. You don't know what book you're writing yet, or you've got to figure out a new offer, or there's some like disconnect, right? Like don't pay me or anybody else to do some marketing for a thing that you don't know yet how that all fits together. This has been amazing. I'm going to go back, Bill, Carlo, and then Michelle. How can people find you and follow your work? What links and such do you want us to know?
Yeah, thank you so much. You can find anything you want to know about me at notarycoach.com.
Fantastic. Carlo.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Robbie. You can find me at realitycheck.institute. All the resources, the platform, and everything is there. Great.
Michelle.
Well, theirs are much easier. I kind of have to spell mine because it's my full name, Michelle with 2 L's, Tillis, Tillis, Lederman, Lederman.com. And from there, you can find all of the other links to my blog, my LinkedIn newsletter, my YouTube channel, anything else that you might want to find is a great place to start.
And I'm going to put all those links and more, including links to their amazing books at the show notes at bizbookpublishinghub.com. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone.
Thank you.